There is a problem with how Rainbow Six Siege is balanced, and nothing points to this more than the patch notes that were released today by Ubisoft for an upcoming test server cycle. The game has been riddled with questionable design decisions in regards to how to handle new operators and how to balance old operators through either making small changes that ultimately have little to no impact on how effective they are, or by just making them simply less fun to play. There are multiple things we can blame for this, but to me, I think it stems from a misunderstanding of how competitive games or sports should be handled. Recently, there was an interview with Rainbow Six Siege's creative director, Leroy Athanasoff. And in all honesty, I believe that his vision of how the game should be developed in order to appeal to the community is the reason why we are receiving changes that don't change anything except having a negative effect on game balance or play experience. But don't just take my word for it. These are his words from the interview. Quote, "We recently tested some of the features we want to introduce in Year 5 and Year 6 in a workshop with pro players, and they were unhappy, to say the least. They are the people that make their living from being good at this game, so they are the people in our population of players that most want to have control of the game. The more they are in control, the better they are at their profession. If you are a professional, you don't like that the rules of something are changing constantly because it challenges you to stay at the highest level. So if they are not happy with our proposed features, then to me, that means we are going in the right direction." End quote. This is a gross misunderstanding of the competitive mindset. The more things that are in control of the player, whether in sports or in video games, the more competitive the game is. You don't see sweeping changes that upend the ability of athletes to compete in their chosen sport for a reason. And yes, esports are different in that you don't want a meta to be stagnant, and sometimes for the health of the game, you do need to reel in certain abilities, guns, or characters in a game from being blatantly broken. But that is a change that is upholding the integrity of the competition, not actively destroying it. The too long didn't read of this is that I'm personally tired of having changes come into the game that are motivated by a perceived problem from a development team that doesn't truly understand why these metrics they perceive as problems, such as overrepresentation of operators, are the way they are, and why sometimes they aren't actually a problem with the operator itself. Which brings me perfectly to today's proposed test server changes. Let's take a look at Jaeger, because he seems to be the one getting hit the hardest. This is a direct quote from their patch notes. He is now a 2-speed, 2-armor operator. Jaeger is a very strong roamer, and multiple data points demonstrate his huge presence in-game. To make his presence a bit less oppressive in-game, we're looking to moderate that by reducing his roaming potential." End quote. There are several problems with this idea that because Jaeger is so prevalently picked, there is a problem with him as an operator. Nothing about Jaeger is broken. Him losing 5 damage a round going from 43 to 38 this last season clearly didn't do what Ubisoft wanted to accomplish, and neither will taking him from a 3-speed to a 2-speed. His ability to move around the map isn't what makes him an ideal roamer, in the same way that Zofia, not being a 3-speed, hasn't negatively affected her role as a fragger in competitive play. You want to know why Jaeger is a perfect roamer? It's because the way Siege has evolved has made Jaeger ADSs almost mandatory. If you don't have a way to counter the myriad of throwable or launch gadgets, you are screwing over yourself and your team on defense. Let's take, for example, Consulate. If you're defending the Consulate office meeting room site at a high level of play, you most likely have a smoke-holding yellow stairs, and if you don't have an ADS, frag grenades become an almost free kill with little risk to yourself as an attacker, and Ying's Candelas become an unstoppable utility that will net free kills if there isn't a warden ready to counter her, which is a fat chance since she's been handled completely wrong to begin with, but that's a topic for another video. I can already hear the, "But what about Wamai?" And I'm glad you asked, because Wamai compared to Jaeger is abysmal. He was clearly designed to be an alternative to lower Jaeger's pick rate, but it hasn't worked like that. You want to know why? No, it's not because he's a 2-speed. He even has a better gun than Jaeger now after this nerf. But it comes down to 2 simple reasons. Number 1, Jaeger gets all his utility at the beginning of the round. He doesn't have to wait 2.5 minutes to get all his utility. Yes, You heard me right. Wamai has to wait 2.6 minutes in order to get all 5 of his magnets. And yes, I said 5. So not only does he take almost the entire round to get his full use, but he also counters 1 less projectile than Jaeger. Now let's look at that second reason. Jaeger is simply easier to use. I can set my gadget down as Jaeger, and guess what? It just destroys the projectile. I don't have to think about whether it will be redirected to a safe spot. If I catch an explosive, it won't destroy the other ADS near it, unlike a magnet, which will destroy any utility within a 5-meter radius now that frags got buffed. And yes, magnets do redirect firebolts, something Jaeger can't do, but more often than not, finding a spot that it can actually be directed to that won't disrupt, say, a bandit trick is a lot easier said than done. Wamai will never be a true alternative to Jaeger unless Jaeger is banned, and even then, he's just a worse version in almost every way. But that could all be fixed if they just made the magnet actually just destroy the utility used. And since we're on the topic of efficacy of Jaeger's gadget, why don't we talk about that proposed Ying buff? If I want to make somebody who I think is overrepresented even more prevalent, what's a great way to do that? How about increasing the amount of things that he counters? Giving Ying an extra Candela is just making the case to bring Jaeger even more strong. Not only does he directly counter her, but he does so by destroying her gadget, while also directly countering any other thrown gadget. Something Wamai can't do, because if I do have a Wamai in a crucial checkpoint, you're still going to get flashed, since it will still go off, and Candelas have a great track record of flashing you as long as you're in the same room, regardless of if you're not facing it, and it's on the opposite side of a solid object. Oh, and guess what? They're even giving Ying smokes, which is even more reason to have an ADS. The only change in this patch that actually works towards Ubisoft's goal of reducing the prevalence of Jaeger is removing frags from Buck, which in and of itself I think is a boneheaded design change. Sure, it's one thing that might distinguish Sledge from Buck, but not enough to actually make Sledge a better pick. In almost every vertical play situation, Buck is simply better. He doesn't need to stand where he's opening, which makes him less vulnerable, and the proposed change to his skeleton key, which would give him 5+1 in a mag, is literally making him even better at soft destruction, on top of still having a better gun than Sledge. Unfortunately, these changes don't stop there, because Mozzie is losing his super shorty. Why, you might ask? Well, let's read the direct quote. Quote, Mozzie is currently a powerful intelligence counter and is a great roamer in the same breath. Altogether, this gives him very high game presence as a single operator, and we're looking to tone down just how much he brings to his team. End quote. Look, Chief, if you understand that Mozzie is a powerful intelligence counter, and that is his main claim to his presence as you have stated, then why are you trying to remove his soft destruction? It's not why he's picked. Does it contribute to his ability to do some things on the roam? Yes, but not by an insane amount. And yes, having more soft destruction can also help the team in the prep phase, but if you recognize his strength and you think it's a problem, why are you going after a minor benefit that he might possess through having the super shorty? Any soft destruction capability you remove from him can just be done by someone else, like the smoke or the mute that you probably already have, with a minor inconvenience of just having to do it at the beginning of the round or during the prep phase, effectively creating a net change of 0. And if this is your idea of how to make Castle a more desirable pick, let me tell you, he had a shotgun before he was given the super shorty, and he still wasn't that great in terms of representation. About the only change in this patch note that is actually good is the damage nerf coming to the TCSG, which is taking it from 84 down to 55, which is a welcome change. At the end of the day, I really think Ubisoft needs to rethink the way that they approach balance in this game and start looking at the why behind their metrics instead of just saying this metric for this operator is really high compared to that operator, therefore something is wrong with that operator, which often leads to bad changes like removing Ash's ACOG on the R4C, which did literally nothing except for lower her pick rate slightly and boost her win rate considerably. Or like nerfing Twitch repeatedly because some fraggers are performing well, even though she doesn't have a huge win rate and continues to have a very low pick rate in competitive to high level play. What is this obsession with wanting to nerf operators that fraggers play? You can nerf the operator, but you can't nerf the person behind the operator. Anyways, I'm done ranting. This isn't intended to be a smear piece or a hate piece. This is just someone who has played the game in a competitive manner, trying to attempt to make the game better, and hopefully someone at Ubisoft might get where I'm coming from, and there might be some better changes coming. Who knows? Anyways, thank you for watching.
Oh fuck! Close right, close right. Oh my god!
Walker, you need to push now.
Yep, I'm getting spotted.
Last two. One's pushing on the. Nice. Okay, last one's in the aquarium. Go push aquarium. Last one aquarium.